I have a 1972 Ferrari 365 GTC4. This is a 1972 European spec model. So it has a different layout than the American spec ones. The American spec ones have an air pump and all that other stuff, but the European ones don't. This one has a 12-plug distributor and no emissions, and is supposedly a little bit more powerful than the US spec cars. But I always feel like at the age of these cars, comparatively, a well-tuned American spec, when we're comparing, yes, it's a numbers game. European spec car is supposed to have more horsepower, but again, on a dyno at wide open throttle. So if it's 20, 30 horsepower more, are you going to feel that on driving around town? So, but at the same time, this car is a European spec car. It has the European marker lights, and it has the engine does not have any of the emissions. Interior-wise, this car is a beige interior. Funny enough, the original interior on this had a green plaid insert, and the owner of this car decided when it was time to reupholster the car, he couldn't put the green plaid in. But and then the outside is what they would call Marrone, which is brown, but it's a metallic, so it's an interesting color. I mean, not for everyone. I kind of like it because it's not red and it's not like your common color. It's, hey, listen, this is the 70s. I mean, you got to imagine this car, brown with a tan and plaid green tartan insert. So it's just that's about as 70s as it gets. I think the update where this just been changed to regular tan interior kind of lends itself a little bit better, a more tasteful modern look to it as opposed to stuck in the 70s. But hey, 70s, 70s colors are back. I never thought I'd see avocado kitchens again, but hey, listen, that sometimes taste you have something long enough, it comes back in style. The story on a C4 is that there's a nickname I found out, a European nickname on it is Gabon or Hunchback. I guess there is a little bit of a hunch in the back, but I don't think it really looks that bad. I mean, I think that it's a pretty good looking car. The side profile has this really cool S curve to it, and I think that it's a good looking car. The one feature on this car that a lot of people have problems with is the nose. So what happened was they put this rubber bumper on the front of the car, and that's the reason why a lot of people don't like it. They just feel that the bumper really kind of doesn't work well with the car, and some people have nicknamed it clown lips. They think that it's just it's not pretty. But with a darker color car, I think it's not as obvious. I think that these cars look better in dark blue, black, obviously, and even this brown works well with the nose because it's not as obvious. Yellow, oh my God, yellow with a black bumper nose, that kind of looks pretty bad. The red ones, again, like I said, I think even red doesn't look very good with the black bumper. Some owners have actually painted this bumper body color just to get rid of it. I think it works really well when they do. But it's just, it is what it is. I mean, it's just part of the design. I think with the pop-up headlights, pop-up headlights are really big these days. So a lot of people, are loving this car with it. It has a really good aggressive look with the headlights on. But that's just what they think. The wheels are chromodoras, are the alloys, and these cars, some of them would come with wires. I think by this age, the car is probably a little too heavy for wires. I think that wire wheels are really at the limits of their ability to handle. I mean, I haven't heard of any of the wires popping or breaking, but I think by this age, the early 70s, Daytonas and 365s, they really stopped coming with wire wheels just because they think that the weight of the car and the performance and the horsepower was really starting to overpower the wire wheels. But this one has the chromodoras, and I think it lends itself to the 70s look. the interior wise is all been done. It's all fresh leather, and the dash was all done in the back into the original mouse fur, which, you know, is kind of funny. It's like they call it mouse fur, but it's just one of these, you know, velvety type materials, and it's been nicknamed mouse fur. Not really the fur mice, but it just certainly has that feel to it. This is pretty fresh because you can see it's dark. What ends up happening is the original stuff used to fade and it would get grayish, and you know, then it would really look like mouse fur because it was like a gray flocking. But yeah, the rest of the interior on this is in pretty good shape. The steering, the shift ball is probably not original. That looks like it's been replaced, but everything else here looks to be what it is. The transmission does not have the gated shifter on the C4. It's got that that kind of shift boot, and you know, that's just the way it is. The C4's transmission is up front. It's not like a transaxle car like the Daytona. So it's a transmission. That shifter is right on top of the transmission. The rear seats on this car are kind of like the modern interpretation of the 2+2. I mean, it's not like the most roomy rear seat, but just the simple fact that it has the rear seats actually helps, because it actually makes it really easy to store stuff. Here, I mean, as if I pull the seats down, I mean, you can see there's tons of room as far as like storage. I mean, it's kind of like how the 911 is. The 911 rear seats are really not usable for people, but it really does make a big difference when you have that rear seat that you can fold down and store things. And of course, in a pinch, you know, you put the seat up, and you know, you can just, if you move this seat forward, you can squeeze somebody in there, and it always helps in a pinch to be able to, you know, throw another passenger or two in the back there just to get them around. So yeah, I mean, it's not really a super comfortable rear seat, but it's certainly a usable rear seat, you know, in an emergency situation or for a short ride. I guess what you really want to see is the engine. So here it is. This is the 365, you know, motor or engine. So it's a 4.4 liter, 2 cam, 6 carburetors. So there's 6 DCOE carburetors. And one of the reasons on this car, they claim that I never really understood this, but the Ferrari said to lower the hood line, they use DCOEs, the side draft carburetors, and that would get the front hood really low. I don't know. Is a C4 hood any lower than a Daytona? And yet a Daytona or 365 GTB4 uses the center downdraft carburetors, you know, in the valley of the V, and yet seems to have a pretty low hood line. This car has the carburetors on the side, the DCOEs, and it's supposed to lower the hood line, but I don't know. It's funny, I just don't see the differences much. Yeah, it's a pretty low, flat, wide engine, but that's just the way they designed. It's pretty impressive as far as, you know, how all this works. I mean, when you look at the throttle linkage and how everything kind of moves along, you know, it's pretty neat how all the carburetors are operated. Working on it, well, it's a little bit of a nightmare. I mean, from a mechanics point of view, I mean, the distributor is stuffed way up underneath the windshield. Any kind of valve adjustment or any kind of thing that goes on there, all the intakes have to come off, the carburetors have to come off, the air cleaners have to come off. Everything has to come off in order to get to the valve train. So a valve adjustment is a pretty major endeavor, because what happens is all the linkages have to come off, the intake runners have to come off, all this stuff has to come off before you can get to the valve covers, and then you can do the adjustment. And in fact, I've had people contact me and try to figure out how to install air cleaners. The funny thing on the C4 is, if you look closely, how do you get the air cleaners out of the air boxes? There's a disposable air filter in here, but there's not enough room against the sides or the wheel wells to get the air cleaner out. When you unbuckle these little clips, you can't get the air cleaner out. So how do you do it? And the real answer is you really kind of can't. I mean, not easily. So in other words, inside these air boxes are little trumpets. They're velocity stacks. So there's 3 velocity or 6 velocity stacks in here that then kind of keep the air cleaner from, the air filter from just coming straight out or even sneaking past it. So what ends up happening is you have to remove each trumpet, get them out before you can even remove the air filter. And then on top of that, there are studs and there are nuts. So some of the tricks that we do is I'll put bolts in there to hold so at least you can take the trumpets out. I mean, it's hard to explain until you've actually worked on it, but there's a couple little tricks that we do so that we can actually get an air filter in and out of there. But it's kind of like when I get a question, somebody says to me, hey, how do you the first time they want to change the air filter on their car, they can't seem to figure it out. And I'll say, well, you basically start with a perfectly good air filter and you kind of crumple it up into a ball, and then you unfurl it inside of the air box. And, of course, all the metal cuts your hands up and all that other stuff. But, this car is not an easy thing to work on. It has its struggles. I think once you've worked on it, you figure out all the tricks. But, yeah, that's like one of those things. And how did the Ferrari factory do it? Well, I suspect that this engine was completely assembled and then dropped into the engine compartment as a unit to make assembly easier. In other words, they had the carburetors, they had the air cleaners, they had the air filters, and everything all together in one piece, and they would just slip the whole thing in there, and then that was that. Because you could still tune the carburetors once the air filter's on and all this other stuff, but you can't, just trying to get the air filter. I just didn't understand how they did it, and that's the only thing that I got. Unless you have an idea of how they assembled this, that's my theory, is that Fiat took over the manufacture of these cars, and maybe went to Ferrari and says, hey guys, let me show you how to put these things together really easily, as opposed to spending all this time assembling all these little pieces one at a time. Why don't we just assemble the whole thing on the bench and then just drop it in as a unit? And maybe the assembly process went a lot quicker that way. But man, working on this car is not an easy thing to do after the fact. But anyway, that's kind of like a little struggle of the C4, but it's still a wonderful car. I mean, one of the, everybody says the C4 is probably one of the best sounding vintage V12 Ferraris out there, and I do admit it sounds pretty good. It's a good sounding car. I think that they're all great cars. I think this one has its own little quirks and things, but it's certainly cheaper, way cheaper. It's probably a quarter or a third of the price of a Ferrari Daytona, and yet it performance-wise, it's pretty good. And on top of it, it has power steering. So this car came from the factory with power steering, and with the power steering unit, it makes it a lot easier to drive around town. I mean, you could just kind of you can just palm the steering wheel and drive all over the place, and not really. It really makes the car a lot easier to handle around town compared to the Daytona. Is Daytona impossible to drive without power steering? No, but this car just has a different feel for it. Definitely has a laid back, more luxury feel than let's say the Daytona. So it's got quite a bit going for it. A couple little mechanical things, but that's just the way it is with these old cars. They're not perfect, but they certainly have an interesting history, and these are rare. I mean, I think there's a couple hundred. Is there 150? I forget how many exactly. I always forget the numbers, but I know that they're fairly rare, and that's another thing that's kind of neat about the C4. So anyway, that's the Ferrari 365 GTC4. When the weather gets better, hopefully I'll get it out and drive it a little bit and get it exercised and things, but for now it's just sitting safe where it is as for storage for now. Thanks for watching.